Hey everyone, this is George Couros, and welcome back to a solo episode of the Innovator's Mindset podcast. And today I'm going to actually talk a little bit about a newsletter I recently wrote on three practical ways to become more coachable. This is something that is really, really important to me. And one of the things that I talked about in the newsletter that is so imperative in the work that we do is, do you actually not only take feedback, but seek it? Do you look to grow? Do you look to be mentored and develop in your work? And one of the stories I actually shared in the newsletter was about being a referee. And being a referee is a really fascinating thing because you get feedback whether you ask for it or not, and there is no compliment sandwich. It is really brutal sometimes not because they're mean or anything like that, but because they don't have time. Typically what happens is if you get to a certain level, they watch you in the first half of a game, and because the halftime is only 10, maybe 15 minutes long, you go into a locker room and the evaluator basically rips you apart. And again, they're not doing it to be mean. It's such a short amount of time. And why they're doing that is they want to see, are you willing to try something new? Are you willing to try and implement some of the feedback that was given to you based on what you heard at halftime? And the people that really excelled as referees, that moved up in the profession really quickly, were the ones that actually took the feedback and tried it in some way. And it doesn't mean that they stuck with it forever, but people are willing to try different things. And something about me that I'm extremely proud of, to be honest with you, I always try new things. No matter what I'm doing, if something is not ideal or is not where I want to go, or maybe I'm just kind of getting into a rut, I'll always try something different to continuously grow and develop. That is something that is really important to me. It's something I really try to implement in my own kids, that we are looking at how do we actually look to try different things. If something's not working, to just hope it does one day is not a really effective strategy. What is the tweak? What is the thing that you can do? And I do this in all elements of my life. And sometimes I think, I'm a little compulsive about it, but it does make my life a lot better. And when I first was writing this email, and I kind of had the idea about it, it was really kind of interesting because I thought about it, and then this image from Justin Sua, and you can actually see it up here on the screen. It's 6 principles of a higher performance mindset. 1, you're never too good to get better. 2, do what you do on purpose with purpose. 3, little by little, a little becomes a lot. 4, focus on the process, not the results. 5, embrace the boredom of consistency. And then 6, learn from failure. So I was thinking about some of these elements, and there's some kind of back and forth between these ideas. So I wanted to share what I wrote in this email newsletter. You can read the whole thing, but I always, like I've done this before, what I like to do is kind of see the points and then what comes to my mind, but also maybe do a little bit of reading. And as someone who hired people, one of the things that I actually shared was that if you are really great as a teacher, but you weren't open to feedback or you weren't willing to grow, typically I would actually take someone who is, maybe not as good at that point in their career, but was willing to develop and willing to grow. Because eventually, if you think of it that way, they're going to surpass that other person. And as educators, if you are not able to take feedback, if you are not able to grow, then how can you ask your students to do the same thing? So I think it's something that we really, really model. So I'm going to talk about these 3 points and share a little bit about each one. So the first one is this: seek feedback toward excellence. And what I actually shared about in this podcast was when I was interning. And this is, prior to becoming, a hired teacher, is a process, and it's maybe called something a little bit different in the US, but we were called like our intern program. I remember when this is the last thing I was doing before graduating and becoming, a teacher. I said to my cooperating teacher, I can still remember her name, Mandy Osmond. She was absolutely awesome. And I said to her, I would actually, one of my goals for this process is I want to win this internship award for best intern of my graduating class. if I was to get your nomination for that, because the cooperating teacher had to nominate their intern for that award, what would I need to do to be, in your mind, to deserve that nomination? So what I'm doing immediately is saying like, hey, what is your standard of excellence so that I know it? So here's what I'm doing to achieve it. So there's two things in that process. She's giving me some goals and things to work on immediately. So I'm actually looking for this. So I'm seeking her feedback in pursuit of excellence. But I will tell you this. Also, I put it in her mind, like, you should nominate me for this award, right? If I can do these things, if I do what you ask me, then I should be able to get that nomination. So I'm also putting there in her head as well with me. And that's something that not only did I do my internship, I did it as a teacher. Going into new schools, one of the things I really would try to do, when I'm trying a lesson that was unique or innovative or something really forward thinking, I would actually ask my principal, my assistant principal, whoever was evaluating me that year, hey, could you come into my class? I'm trying this new thing and I would love your feedback on this. And it's kind of a win-win situation because I'm getting some feedback, but they're going to be doing an evaluation. So it's like, hey, I want them to walk in when I'm doing something that I'm really proud of, really excited about. And, I'm also open to their feedback and doing that too. The quote that I actually shared at the top of this email is based on this, is that the best way to deal with feedback is to ask for it before it's given. And that's what I was trying to do, is basically, maybe there's a little control. The more I talk about this, the more I feel I have control issues, but it is really kind of like, going out to seek that rather than waiting for it to happen to you. Because I think when you wait for it to happen to you, you might not be in the best situation at the time. You might not be in the best mindset, and it doesn't mean, and you might not take it as well as you would have at another time. The second one that I wrote about is try new things with purpose. And this is something that matters to me. I recently started swimming. And I started swimming because I'm getting older. This is kind of true. I'm getting older, and I know that it's a low impact exercise, keeps in my cardio. But I know like some of the things I really want to do well in my life physically, swimming would be really beneficial, and it's something I'm really terrified of. So I don't just kind of go in the pool. I push myself. I look at training opportunities, different ways that I could share this, and I try to show up my best. When I just went for a long run today, I do my best to not see it as something that I'm dreading, but something I just do. And when you do it, then you show up and you give your best every single day. And no matter the task, if you are grumpy about it, it's way harder to do. It doesn't matter if you hate your job. If you show up grumpy every day, it's going to be way worse. And it's not saying like, hey, well, let's just accept things that we hate. It's, hey, let's give it our best, and that might open some doors for you too. Thinking about this, my own kids, when I ask them to do something and they're grumpy about it, it's not my favorite thing. And I might be a hard-nosed dad, but I think a lot of educators would appreciate some not so gentle parenting. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not a gentle parent. I have very high expectations of my kids, how they interact with their siblings, with myself, with their family and with others, but also their attitude towards things. Because yes, if I ask them to do something and they're grumpy, they're whining about it, do you want to work with someone like that? Is that someone who you want to work with? Is that someone you want in your classroom all the time? So it's like, hey, give it your best as you're going to go do everything. And one of the quotes I shared in this, and it's not mine, but I've heard it so many times, but it really sticks to me, is how you do anything is how you do everything. So when you strive for excellence, no matter what your role is in life, what you do with your family, it lifts you up and it starts to open up doors for you. If you're doing a job that, when I was trying to show up and doing something that I wasn't really aspiring to do, but I showed up with enthusiasm to do it, it is actually opened up doors for me later. When I show up to my workout, when nobody's watching and I push myself as hard as possible, I think that kind of sets a tone for the rest of my day. And that's the standard I set for myself. And honestly, I set for my own kids. And I think that will open doors for them as it has for me as well. The third one that I wrote about is that implement feedback quickly. And I'll go back to the reffing story. One of the things that I was asked to do during my evaluation, which is really kind of fascinating, I was beating players on the court. Like at the time I was a ref, I was, pretty fit, but they were making fun of my run. They said it was like, didn't look well. And there's a time in my life where my hair was a lot shorter than what it was then, because they didn't want hair flowing. Like your presentation as a referee was actually really meaningful, because they actually don't want you to get noticed. The best referees, I know this sounds weird, the best referees in any sport are the ones you don't notice. The more you notice them, the more of an issue they are. And I think that's something I truly believe with leadership, is that sometimes leadership, if you notice everything they're doing, this may be not the best thing, because your job as a referee, as a leader, is to elevate people. Anyways, to kind of think about this, the idea of basically my run, I tried it, and they told me about my stride and how to do this and whatever. And I tried it, and it was so uncomfortable. It did not work for me, but they so appreciated that I actually tried it. And then I went back to what I was doing before. Not all feedback needs to be incorporated for the rest of your life, but your willingness to try really, really matters. And I wrote this, that as a ref, you're not expected to be flawless. You're expected to be adaptable. If you delay acting on feedback when it's provided, the assumption is that you never will. The most important thing in life isn't perfection, it's growth. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, a coach, or just a human trying to get better, quick feedback implementation accelerates development. So those three things about being practical, or practical ideas for coaching, is this: seek feedback towards excellence. Do you go out of your way to actually ask for feedback so you can grow? The second was try new things with purpose. Doing something is one part of it. Your attitude while you're doing it really can set you up for success, or honestly failure. If you're grumpy about something you do all day, you're not gonna do it well, and honestly, you're gonna actually make everyone else around you worse. So that's something to think about. And then the last one, implement feedback quickly. When you get that feedback, when people say to me, "Oh, like let me think about that a little while," typically they never do it, right? It's like, "Hey, I'm gonna just try this. I'm gonna try this thing," and it doesn't mean that it always works, but maybe it does. And the quicker you know that, the better. The one last thing that I do want to share, and I did write this in the email, not all feedback from people you have to act upon either, right? So of course we go seek out feedback. There are times where I receive feedback from people I have no interest in seeking feedback from. They'll say something and it's unsolicited, and sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not, but your tone and your delivery. One thing that really matters to me is, first of all, are you giving me feedback because you're trying to elevate me, or is it really criticism that you're pretending is feedback because you're trying to like knock me down a peg? And that's something that matters to me. And so not all feedback is something that you have to implement from whoever gives it. But the most important feedback you ever receive is when you look in the mirror and you talk honestly with yourself. There are times in my life where I know I'm not doing what I should be doing. I'm not being as good as a human as I could be, as a professional as I could be. And I'm always trying to implement this, in a different way. When I speak, I don't necessarily, read the feedback from people, because sometimes I get so fixated on what one person said that's never spoke, never been in that space. And it starts to bother me. And they've, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't ever take criticism, but I am so hard on myself when I speak. My standard is so much higher, and I always evaluate everything I do. I know you can never hit perfection, but I strive for it all the time, because when you strive for that perfection, you understand it's just a willingness to grow, to get better. You'll never actually hit it, but it's the willingness to grow and develop your craft, develop as a human, that really, really matters. So being honest with yourself, looking in the mirror, I'm not a big motivation person, but I am a big discipline person. I hope that, I give you some ideas, but ultimately at the end of the day, what are you going to do with this? What are you going to do with this information I'm providing you? That's where you'll grow. It's not because, George said this thing. Nobody really cares at the end of the day. It's what you actually do. So that's something that really, really matters to me. One last thing I want to share. This email I had an idea for, and I was super busy. I wanted to spend some time with my kids, and I knew I had a busy week coming on. So I had these ideas and I wrote them in short form, and I basically dictated and had ChatGPT kind of collaborate with me on this email. So I shared it, and then it kind of I dictated it as well. And there are some benefits and some negatives. And I actually wrote a blog post. You can see that down below as well, talking about the process and how there's some good things out of it. There's some bad things. There's some opportunities for accessibility with our students. But that was me trying to learn. And it's interesting because I'm getting feedback sometimes from, AI. And again, I don't always implement it, but I do try different things. But I just want to share those things with you. You can check out the newsletter. You can check out the process of how I put this newsletter together with AI if that's something you're interested in. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy day. I hope something here was valuable for you. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.